Hey everyone, it's Prime. I don't know if anybody's actually in the room yet or how I tell if that's happening. If you're in the room, it is 4:57. So I'm going to start officially in 3 minutes. And if you're here, you can navigate your way to the chat box and just let me know, like say hi, Prime, or whatever. Let me know that you can hear me and that everything's going okay. For the webinar, you won't have to look at my face the whole time. There is a slideshow presentation. My face is going to be in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Just because, like, why wouldn't you want to look at this face? But also I know, like, we're talking about big nutritional stuff and you might want to take notes and you might want to, like, actually get to see some of the things that I'm saying rather than just watch me flail around with my hands a lot. So if you're in the room and you can hear me and everything seems like it's working okay, please type in the chat box and say hi. Let me know that you can hear me. And I'm going to pull up the slideshow presentation. And once it's up, let me know that you can see it as well. Here it is. Well, I'll have to re-find it again, of course. Slide presentations. Secrets to eating like an athlete. All right, so hopefully at this point you can see the very first page in the slide and then also my little face in the right-hand corner. And then that way it looks a little bit more clear and a lot less grainy when I'm that small, so that's good. Oh, yay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. Will I share this presentation? That's a really good question. This is the first time that I've done this webinar with this software, so I'm not 100% sure if it's getting recorded or how to share it. If you are here, I will work my hardest to figure that out and get it to you since I have your email from signing up. And just keep your fingers crossed that that is something that I can figure out afterwards. So I know it is being recorded, obviously, and I'll figure out what format that's going to take and try and share it with everybody that is here. In a little bit, my co-presenter slash what's the word? I lost it. The person that's helping me run this webinar, Gavin McHale of McHale Strength, is going to show up, and he'll be in the chat box answering any questions that come up as we do the presentation, because I get really distracted by your chat. And I want you to feel like you can ask questions in chat as the presentation goes on, but I'll just like freeze and read all of the things. Co-host, thank you. See, I'll get distracted and I'll read all of the things. And then I'll never get through the presentation. I'll end up talking about fucking physics or something. So, all my witty comments, they're not that witty, don't worry. As much as you can, like, let me know if there's any sort of lag time. And also, I am home. I'm doing this at home and my kid is here. So you might hear him running around in the background. It's screaming and he might try and break down the door. And if that happens, I'll take care of it, but hopefully that's not going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And when Gavin shows up, I'll make sure that he introduces himself in the chat box so that you guys kind of know who's going to be answering for you, so that I don't get distracted. So today's webinar is the secrets to eating like an athlete. And a lot of this is going to be, like it says down here on the tin, it's kind of like eating the rest of the time, but more intense. And I'll talk about what that means in a second. And this is kind of a co-production between Iron Octopus Fitness, which is basically just me, and that's a resource for roller derby athletes to help with their cross training, kind of the 3 prongs of cross training, which is physical, mental, and then lifestyle, which deals with things like sleep and nutrition and hydration and all of those things. And my buddy Gavin McHale of McHale Strength, who does the same thing, but primarily with hockey and curling athletes. He's Canadian, in case you couldn't tell by that twofer of sports that he works with. And he and I run a program together called Pain-Free Performance, and that's where a lot of this information came from. So Pain-Free Performance is our group coaching. Oh, good, Gavin's here. Everybody say hi to Gavin. You probably won't get to see his face or hear his voice, but he is in the chat box representing so he can answer your questions. So today is something that came out of that group and that a lot of people in the group found to be helpful. So I'm going to be sharing it with you. And later on, I'll be doing more webinars as the months go on. And if you have ideas about what you'd like to see in a webinar, you can always let me know. You can email me at prime@ironoctopusfitness.com. And I also hope next time that I'll have kind of the recording down and figuring out how to share it, and then also doing it at multiple times. So if you have to leave, I understand. Obviously, like I have practice tonight. A lot of us probably do. So that's where we're at right now. So the secret's to eating like an athlete. The real secret is that there's never a secret, right? There's not a pill that you can take. There's not something really quick that you can do that is going to make it possible for you to just perform at your best all of the time. Like if that existed, I think we would all have it already and there would be no need for this webinar. But in order to kind of harness the nutrition secrets that we know and make them applicable to an athlete so that you have better performance and you can use food to gain better performance, we're going to talk about what that means for you as an athlete. So it's kind of like eating the rest of the time, but more intense. And this was a GIF, and I know you guys can't see it now, but it's basically just this guy chewing. So what does it mean when I say that eating intensifies for you as an athlete? What that really means is that as an athlete, your performance target is decidedly more narrow than the general population, right? You have a deadline at which you have to perform. You have very specific skills you have to perform. There's a little bit more pressure on you to actually perform than there is for the general population. So if the general population is just like, oh, I want to look good naked, or I want to lose 5 pounds, or I want to run a 5K, their target is necessarily more broad. And so they can, not ease up and ignore their nutrition, but they don't have to be quite as focused on it. So that's what we're talking about as an athlete, is like the basics of nutrition and how to focus in on those so that you can actually harness some of the boosts in performance that you can get from food. Fuel, that's what it is. You're going to hear me use the analogy of like your body being a car and food being fuel a lot today. So just, I guess, like buckle in for that. And there's another like, hey, I'm just with that analogy. We're in a car, we're buckling in, food is fuel, here we go. All right, so before we get started, who the hell are we? Gavin, if you'd like to explain further in the chat box who you are, feel free. But that's Gavin on the top in his hockey kit. He's obviously a goalie. He's a former NHL draft prospect. He loves lifting heavy things. And like I said earlier, he primarily works with the general population or former athletes that want to get back to their athletic form, and then hockey and curling athletes. And he is peak Canadian. He would never say that to you, but that's what I say about him. That is the roller derby name I have given him. He is peak Canadian. And one of these days I'm going to get him on quad skates, and it's going to be hilarious. We'll love every second of it. It's going to be amazing. And then that's me down at the bottom facing the camera with the stripe on my head. I rarely pivot, but I happen to be doing it in this picture. And my name's Prime, or Emily is my government name, but if you know me through Iron Octopus Fitness, you probably know me as Prime. And I am a roller derby enthusiast. Yes, I skate, but I really love everything about roller derby. I love watching it. I love seeing the sport grow. I love the strategy. I love the stats. I love everything about it. I'm also a tea connoisseur. I much prefer tea to coffee. In fact, I won't drink coffee, but I will walk like blocks in the pouring rain to go to some place that has butterscotch leaf tea, which I have done before. And I would consider myself to be an okay skater. I know a fair amount about exercise science and how to train for performance, but I'm not in a situation where I can like take the ferry to Rat City for 2 hours every day and practice with them. And that's just okay with me. I'm fine with that. I like being an okay skater. With our powers combined, we are 2 world-class coaches that want to help athletes feel better, look better, and perform better. So we have actually combined to work together in our group coaching program, Pain-Free Performance, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end, which is where a lot of this content showed up the very first time. So here we are. Well, here I am. You get to actually see me, and then Gavin's in the chat box. Oh, don't worry. Come on in. Welcome. All right, so nutrition. We're just going to start with why does it even matter? I think all of us have kind of probably heard or thought about that idea of like food is fuel. If your body is a car, you need to have the right amount of fuel. But the real important thing, especially as recreational athletes, which I think probably 99% of us on the call are, is that nutrition is really easy to ignore. I mentioned in my Facebook Live today that like as a mom, if I don't actually think about what I'm going to eat, or I don't track what I'm eating, I won't eat because it's just easier. It's not that I don't get hungry. It's not that I don't want to eat. It's just like I'm chasing around this 3-year-old tornado and I don't ever stop. And so if I'm not thinking about when I'm going to eat and how I'm going to eat and that I have practice coming, et cetera, it just doesn't happen. And then I will bonk at practice. Like I've got practice at 9 o'clock tonight and I haven't eaten very much today because it's been tantrum Tuesday. It is Tuesday, right? It's been tantrum Tuesday all day today. It's just been awful. But so I haven't been eating very much because it is so easy to ignore. We get really wrapped up in like, oh, I have to run home from work and I have to train and I have to go to practice. And then like practice ends so late, I got to get to bed. And oftentimes like self-care and eating are the things that go by the wayside, the things that we kind of ignore. And both of those things are really important to performance. Today in the webinar, I'm going to talk mostly about food being fuel. So if you're the type of person that knows that you have a relationship with food where you can't look at food as numbers because you'll become obsessive, or that's not a really good, is anybody else freezing in the webinar? My signal says it's at full strength. I'm going to take a time out and we're going to see in the chat box if anybody else is getting frozen. Okay, it looks like it might just be you, Katie Jo. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how to fix internet things. I like unplug your computer and plug it back in is pretty much all I got. Maybe you'll try and log out and log back in and see if that works. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. Okay, so food is fuel. Again, if you have a relationship with food where you know that you can't think about it as numbers or you can't think about it as fuel because that's going to get you into your head, then maybe now would be a good time to log out of this webinar. I am going to talk a little bit about numbers. And if you get obsessive about numbers, whether scale numbers or nutritional numbers, and you know that about yourself, then this might be a good time to log out. And I have a Facebook Live that I did today that was all about nutritional habits and less about numbers. So I would go watch that. And then if you have any questions, you can email them to me. But right now, I'm going to talk mostly about food as fuel. I don't believe that food is fuel. I believe it's for a lot of other things as well. I believe we feast and party and have great times and enjoyment around food. But for this thing, we're going to specifically talk about food as fuel for performance. So again, you're going to hear the analogy of like fuel runs the car. If you run out of fuel, you can't really go anywhere, but there's a lot of things that are specific about fuel rather than just like, do you have enough? It's like, do you have enough? Are you using the right kind of fuel? Is it high quality fuel? Like, are you fueling up at the right times? Those are all questions that we're going to look at as well as we go through this webinar. And different foods have different purpose. So that kind of goes along with the idea of like, are you using the right kind of fuel? The food that you choose to eat can either make or break your performance goals, right? I think we can all imagine, I'll get there in a second. And then at the end of this, I just want you to be able to make an informed decision, right? If you get through this webinar and you're like, I hear everything that Prime is saying, but I'm not going to do any of it, cool. Like that's your choice. And I 100% support you making an informed decision. I just want to be here to provide information for you so that you can make that informed decision. If I cannot get it recorded, Nora, I will make sure that the slides are available for you guys. So if I can't send you the recording, I'll definitely send you the slides. Thank you for asking that. That's a good question that didn't even occur to me. All right, so different foods have different purpose. Let's just imagine like what it might be like as an athlete if we would just ate whatever we wanted all of the time. If LeBron James, as a matter of fact, ran around eating McDonald's and Sprite, and he's got a lot of drinks in this picture, and then some like Bubblicious, which, I mean, I don't know how many calories bubblegum has, but you spit it back out at the end, so I don't know. Basically, it's easier for us to meet our performance goals when we're using the right fuel. Just like it's easier for us to meet our performance goals when we're preparing physically for it, it's easier for us to meet our performance goals when we're preparing mentally for it. If we want our car to run the way that it's supposed to run, we need to give it the fuel that it needs to have. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That doesn't mean that you can't eat McDonald's. It doesn't mean that you can't drink a Sprite. That doesn't mean that you can't chew bubble gum. What it means is that those things are not the primary nutritional things that you should be ingesting if you want to not run out of energy. That's really what we're going to talk about today, is like not bonking during the middle of the game, not feeling lightheaded at practice, those sorts of things that I think probably happen to us once or twice a week. I mean, hopefully not that much, but you know, we've all been in really intense games and just all of a sudden been like, I'm out of energy. That's not what we want. So today is all about the nutritional hierarchy, and we're going to go from the bottom of this pyramid to the top. And we want to build this pyramid as solidly as possible as an athlete, because the more solid all of these levels are, the better it's going to impact our performance. So these are the 5 levels of the nutritional hierarchy. Calories is at the bottom, and I'll go through each one of these in detail in just a second. So calories is the bottom, so that's what we're going to focus on first. And then macronutrients, micronutrients, meal timing, and supplements. You'll notice, like, I'm just going to draw attention to this. Look at the top of the pyramid. I'm pointing, although nobody can really see it. Supplements is at the top. So there are definitely some supplements that I would recommend that most roller derby athletes are taking automatically. Like, you should be taking these supplements even if you're still at the bottom of your nutritional hierarchy. But if you're talking about like really specific supplements, they're called supplements for a reason. They do not fix your diet and they do not fix your lifestyle. If you are missing macronutrients or micronutrients, then you have to fix those things with food, because food is going to be what helps you perform more than a supplement. And that's my soapbox, and I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Okay, so very first thing, the very bottom of the nutritional hierarchy, and this is really where I see a lot of athletes that I work with completely missing the mark, is calories. So calories, despite what this meme says, are not tiny creatures that live in your closet and sew your clothes a little bit tighter every night. They're basically just a measurement of heat energy. In order to determine how many calories something has, the scientific community, literally burns it and sees how much heat it gives off. I used to do this with my students in science class. We burn Cheetos underneath, beakers of water and see how much heat it transferred into the water, and that would tell us how many calories it had. The difference between like burning a Cheeto, which is 7 calories, and burning a peanut, which is 7 calories, is that Cheetos burn a lot easily and a lot faster than peanuts. So when we talk about high quality foods, which we'll do in a second, it's a matter of how much your body has to work to burn that energy, and also how much your body is getting out of that energy when it burns it. Nutritionally dense foods like the peanut are going to be more useful to your body than the Cheeto. Not that I have anything against Cheetos, because they're fucking amazing. I just don't eat them very much. So for an athlete, for everyone in the general population, it absolutely does matter how many calories you eat. This goes back to the car and the fuel analogy. If you do not have enough fuel in your car, you're going to run out of gas before you get where you're going, period. Food is fuel. So the biggest thing that I notice with a lot of athletes is they come to me and I'm like, before we do anything, I want you to just write down how much you eat for like a week. I just want to know everything that you're eating every day for a week. So they write it down, and then they come back and they're eating like 1,700 calories, which they think is fine, because we have been kind of brainwashed to believe that 2,000 calories is the standard number of calories for people in general, which is ridiculous. I'm 5'11" and I weigh 155 pounds, and Gavin is 6'7" and weighs I don't know how many pounds. Like, do you really think that I need the same number of calories as somebody that's nearly a foot taller than me? Absolutely not. Like, that's ridiculous. We all know big cars use more fuel than smaller cars. Like, that's just the way that it is. So 230 pounds. Oh, big guy. All right. So caloric needs are based on you, specifically on you, not some random magical number that like the USDA decided was going to be great for everyone to go off of. The amount of energy that you expend, which if you're a roller derby athlete, you expend a lot of energy, your current weight, and a couple of other things. Your goal, like, are you really focusing on your performance, or is fat loss more your style? Or are you in your off season and you're focusing on muscle gain? Because those things will change how many calories you need to eat. And the real question, whenever we talk about calories and this base level of your pyramid, is, are you eating enough calories? Period. Because chances are good, if you haven't really thought about it a lot and you're just kind of getting by eating whatever you're eating, you are likely not getting enough calories to sustain the amount of activity that you're doing. At least anecdotally, my experience with all of the female athletes that I've come across is that the majority of them are not eating enough. And that's like a cultural thing that is just way more than I can get into in this webinar, but I think we all know in the back of our head probably what I'm thinking about. So what is enough? This is just a basic calculation that I'm going to provide for you. There are lots of calculations out there. This is the one that I'm going to give to you. And I know that this box in the bottom is kind of hard to see, so I'm going to walk you through it really fast. But for this example, you need to know your current weight, your activity level based on the activity levels inside this box, what your goal is. And for everyone on this webinar, I'm going to say right now your goal is weight maintenance. We're not talking about fat loss. We're not talking about muscle gain. We're talking about weight maintenance, because if we are eating enough calories to maintain our weight, we're getting enough energy to do all of the things our body needs to do at the amount of activity that we're participating in, if that makes sense. And then because we're athletes, our priority is performance. So at the time that I wrote this example, I was 165 pounds and it was the off season, so my activity level was moderate. So what it says down here in this box is sedentary individuals, which is minimal exercise. And if you're in this webinar, I'm assuming that's not you. Moderate activity, which is 3 to 4 times a week. And then very active, which is 5 to 7 times a week. And this is talking about sessions of training. So if you practice 3 times a week and you train 3 times a week in the gym, that's 6 total sessions of training. So you are very active. Even if you do 2-a-days, that's only 3 days of training, but it's 6 full sessions. So you would still be a very active individual. We're also going to go with the numbers in the middle column because that's for weight maintenance. We want our weight to stay the same. That's how we're going to figure out if we are eating enough to run the machinery of our body, right? If I choose weight maintenance and I start eating at that calorie level and my weight is still dropping, that means my maintenance level is actually much higher than what I'm eating. So that's why we want to stick with weight maintenance for right now. So if you are moderately active, your range is 14 to 16, which are the numbers that I used here. And then if you're very active, your range is 16 to 18. So you're going to have a low end of calories and a high end of calories. And for me, because when I did this, I was 165 pounds and moderately active, my low range of calories is 165 times 14, which equals about 2,300 calories a day. And my high range is 165 times 16, which is about 2,600 calories a day. So that means that I can hit anywhere between 2,300 and 2,600 calories a day. And that will keep my weight where I am, which means that my body is utilizing all of that energy. And that's moderately active. So when I was training 3 days a week and I wasn't going to practice. There are lots of things you can do with these calorie numbers, and we're not really going to get into that right now. But this is just like, for me, as a 165 pound woman, I need to be eating more than 2,000 calories a day, period. Like, that's what this comes down to. So if you have any questions about this equation, only works if your weight is in pounds. Sorry, non-US people, which is probably a lot of you. We don't use standard measurements, which is dumb and I hate it. Sorry. The US is kind of stupid a lot of the time. So yeah, you have to convert into pounds, which is kilograms times 2.2. So as you have these calculation numbers, make sure that you at least write down like the idea of what the calculation is so you can calculate later if you need to, and you can move on. And Gavin is fielding your questions, so I'm ignoring them as best I can. I promise I'm not ignoring you as people. You're all wonderful. Okay, so that is the base layer of the nutritional hierarchy, and that is always where you want to focus first. What you need to do as an athlete is make sure that you have solidified and are consistently hitting your proper number of calories before you go up to the next level, because calories are the fuel that feeds the beast. If you run out of gas, it's gonna suck, period. So we want to make sure that we're always getting enough gas into the car before we really worry about what that gas looks like, what type of gas that is, how high quality the gas is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So once you have your calories figured out and you are hitting your calorie number consistently. So that's the second part. Not only do you have your calories figured out, but you are consistently hitting the number of calories that you're supposed to hit, then you can move up to the next level of the nutritional hierarchy, which is macronutrients. I am not getting to that question, Gavin. Go ahead and answer it. Okay, so macronutrients. Macronutrients is what kind of fuel you're getting when you're putting the fuel into the car. So we have the proper amount of fuel. You're consistently hitting that number. You always have the right amount of fuel in your car. Now it's like, am I using the right fuel or the best fuel for my car? That's what macronutrients are. It's essentially the nutrients that make up the majority of our food. There are 4 macronutrients that exist out there, and I'm only going to talk about 3 because the 4th one doesn't really offer you any value. And I'll just tell you right now, because I know a lot of you are going to know, like, oh my God, what is the 4th one? I have to know. It's killing me. The 4th one is alcohol. So in terms of athletic performance, alcohol is not offering you anything, and it is not a type of fuel that you should rely on. That doesn't mean you can't have alcohol. That just means that we don't want to rely on it as a type of fuel that's going to boost our performance. So there are 3 big types of macronutrients we're going to talk about, and most of you have probably heard of these. There's proteins, carbs, and fat. And what macronutrients are is how calories are determined per gram of food. So if I have 1 gram of protein, it's going to have 4 calories in it. If I have 4 grams of protein, it's going to have 16 calories in it. Same thing with carbs. Carbs also have 4 calories per gram. So if I have 1 gram of carbohydrates, it's going to have 4 calories in it. And then for fats, if I have 1 gram of fats, it's going to be 7 calories. Most foods are obviously divided up between proteins, carbs, and fats. Most meats are proteins and fats. There are lots of like baked goods and pastas and things that are carbohydrates with a little bit of protein and a little bit of fat. When we're talking about macronutrients, specifically what kind of macronutrients you should be eating, we determine what kind of macronutrient a food is by the primary number of calories it has. So if the majority of the calories in a food come from protein, we consider that food to be a protein. The majority of the calories in a food come from carbohydrates, we consider that food to be a carbohydrate. And if the majority of calories in that food come from fat, we consider that food to be a fat. So peanut butter is one that I always like to use as an example here. A lot of people think peanut butter is a protein, when in actuality, the majority of calories in peanut butter come from fat. So it is actually a fat. It does have a fair amount of protein in it when we're looking at other foods and other butters, nut butters. But peanut butter is primarily a fat food because the majority of the calories in that food come from fat. So that's something you want to think about. When we're talking about macronutrients, specifically for athletes, protein is key. Last slide, I talked about how you're probably not getting enough calories. This slide, I'm going to talk about how you're probably not getting enough protein. So the best calculation for how to determine how much protein you should be getting is your body weight in kilograms times 2, or your body weight in pounds. So if I weigh 165 pounds, which we already discussed on that last slide, I want to get around 165 grams of protein, which is a lot. I'm not going to kid you about how much protein that actually is. It's a lot. And if you aren't already prioritizing protein as you eat, it's going to seem like way more protein than you can eat in a day. I have not eaten all of my protein yet today, and I supplement my protein because it is hard for me to get it in when I'm chasing my toddler around. That is one of the supplements you can start using right now. But protein is key, right? Protein synthesizes muscles. It helps your muscles repair. It helps your muscles grow. It can help combat soreness from things that you're doing in the gym or in your practice. Protein is so important. It makes you feel fuller, longer. It's a really, really valuable macronutrient, especially for athletes. It's very, very important for performance. It is the thing that you want to prioritize when you are looking at what you're eating. So a lot of people, when I tell them like, oh, you should be eating your body weight in pounds or your body weight in kilograms times 2, are like, whoa, shit, that's way too much protein. So the goal is always to start as high as you feel comfortable and then work up. So I usually start my clients at about 100 grams of protein if they feel like that is if they feel like that's doable. And then after they've hit that number for a week or two and they start to feel comfortable with that, then we add 20 grams, 120 grams of protein. And then after they've done that for a while, we try and add 20 grams. You might find, as somebody that eats food, because we're all people that eat food, that you get to 140 grams of protein and you can't get higher than that. Or you get to 140 grams of protein and eating more than that feels gross. 140 grams is a good number. Like, you can stick there and that's fine. The other issue that I often have is with larger skaters, larger athletes that are like, well, that would be 220 grams of protein. Like, that's so much protein. That's way more than I need. Then same thing, that skater can come down to 140, 160. I would say anywhere between like 120 to 180 is a pretty good protein number. You always want to hit higher, especially on days that you are training and days that you're recovering. But that's the range, the best range that you can find yourself in. And then in terms of the rest of the calories, because 180 grams of protein is only 560 calories or something, then the rest of your calories you fill in with carbs and fats. And the way that you do that is preferential to you. You decide, do I like bacon, which is like fattier foods, or do I like donuts? And if you like donuts better, then you can prioritize carbs a little bit more. And if you like bacon better, you can prioritize fats a little bit more, or you can change back and forth. I used to do more fat on days that I wasn't training than on days that I was, because I wanted that quick carbohydrate energy. So I wanted to have more of that on board. But it's really, in that case, it's up to you. You just kind of, it's an experiment. You kind of mess around with where the rest of your calories are at, and you find something that works for you and something that feels good and something that doesn't impact your performance poorly, like fat sitting in your stomach like a rock as you're trying to do your lab test. So that's the next step. Once you have your calories done and you're getting them consistently, then it's a matter of making sure that you're hitting your protein macros consistently and still hitting your calories. And then you can go up to the third level, which is the pretty basic one. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but my toddler's he's about to bang down the door, I think. We're just going to ignore it. We're going to ignore it and keep going. Okay, so the next level after calories and macronutrients is micronutrients. So micronutrients are nutrients that our body needs in smaller amounts that typically come from fruits and vegetables, hence the picture. I talked about this a little bit in my Facebook Live today, if you guys got a chance to see it. Basically, this is eat your veggies, eat your colors, get a variety of foods. Because all those micronutrients that we need as athletes exist in these foods in small amounts, and we want to make sure that we're kind of covering all of our bases. When I say micronutrients, I'm talking about things like potassium, magnesium, zinc, copper, vitamin D, which you can't get from food, and I'll talk about that in a second. So basically your vitamins and minerals, those are your micronutrients, and you're trying to get them from your foods. In the webinar, not in the webinar, this is the webinar. In the Facebook Live today, I said 3 to 5 servings of fruits and veggies. So once you've hit calories consistently, once you're hitting your protein consistently, then it's a matter of like making sure that you are eating 3 to 5 servings of a variety of vegetables. So loud. And that's it. Like, the micronutrients level is pretty easy. Micronutrients that help better with recovery. Those are usually electrolytes, things like potassium, magnesium. That's why we soak in Epsom salts to get those ions in our body. Things like that help quite a bit. I'm getting so distracted by my family. I really apologize, everyone. So the lower 3 columns of this pyramid, or the lower 3 bases of the pyramid, are what I would consider the foundation. Like, these are the things that you absolutely have to have in place to have pretty solid performance just overall, consistently. You want to make sure that your calories are on point and that you are at your weight maintenance kind of range. That's what I would shoot for performance. You want to make sure that your macronutrients are on point, and then obviously that you are getting a variety of micronutrients, because once you know that you are eating a variety of foods, once you start having issues, like things pop up, like, oh, I always have hamstring cramps after practice, then you know that the problem isn't your diet, and you can start targeting, like, do I need supplements? You should probably go to the doctor, like those sorts of things. So that's why, like, I would consider these to be the foundation. Like, you have to have these things in place. And then as an athlete, you get an opportunity to start narrowing it down even further as you get to the top of the pyramid to help even more. I'm glad you guys are getting a lot out of the webinar. I feel like I'm all over the place, so super thankful for Gavin being here in the chat box and answering these questions, because I would just be like off in left field already. All right, so those 3 things, again, are the foundation. We really, really want to focus on those. You need to make sure that those are like locked and loaded, that you are loaded and ready for bear with those 3 things when it comes time to hit the track or hit the field or whatever it is that you're doing, hit the gym. And then beyond that, these are kind of extras. Like, if you know that you have your calories on point, that you have your protein on point, that you have your micronutrients on point, then we get to nutrient timing. And nutrient timing is prioritizing certain nutrients around physical activity. So we know that skating is a really physically intense activity. For some reason, no one else in the world seems to believe that roller skating is as physically intense as it is, or ice skating, I would imagine. But it is a very intense physical activity. And in order to get all the way through it, however long that is, whether it's a practice or a game or a tournament, you want to make sure that you are giving your body energy that it can burn to get all the way through that. So that's what nutrient timing is. It's prioritizing certain nutrients around your physical activity so that you don't bonk in the middle or near the end, or especially if you're in a tournament, you don't like bonk through the second game and you just can't compete. So again, nutrient timing is at the top of the pyramid. Do not worry about this until your calories, macros, and micros are on point. Aaron, I don't know if Gavin has an answer for this, but I really recommend No Meat Athlete if you haven't found that resource yet. I used to be a vegan, so I will get back to those questions in a little bit. Prior to physical activity, what you really want to focus on, if you are to the point where nutrient timing is for you, is getting your carbs and protein. So I would say 10 to 20 grams of protein and a large amount of carbs, 40 grams, maybe anywhere between 20 and 30% of your total carbohydrates for the day, depending on how much physical activity you're doing. If you're just going to the gym and it's going to be 30 minutes in the gym and you're not going to expend that much energy, then obviously you can bring that carb intake down a little bit, or you can just like drink Gatorade while you're at the gym, although Gatorade has a lot of carbs in it. But if you're going into a tournament, like, or you're going into a really intense, important game, you want a lot of carbohydrates on board before you get there. A lot of easily digestible carbohydrates and proteins. Things like shakes are really good here. I use fruit snacks. Like, I hate to admit that I just go out and like steal my child's fruit snacks and eat them. But I do. Fruit snacks are amazing for like quick energy, both before and during games. Pretzels are things that I use. They're really easily digestible. They have salt, which is really great as an athlete. So before you go out there, if you know it's going to be really intensely physical, you want a little bit of protein, right? You're going to kind of stack it on those muscles and make sure that they're feeling okay and that they're going to recover well, and then lots of carbs, because that's what your body is going to burn through as quickly as possible. During physical activity, you really want to focus on hydration and carbohydrates. Do not eat anything that is not a simple carbohydrate, like fruit snacks, like I already said, juices, things like that. Stuff that your body can burn through immediately that isn't going to sit in your stomach like a rock. Because that's the worst. The worst is when you're like getting ready to go out there and jam or do whatever you're doing. I pretend like I'm a jammer. I'm not a fucking jammer, but like you're getting ready to go out there to do something and then you can barely move because you're just sluggish from after, like you just ate a big plate of nachos, which please don't do before your bout or your game. So that's during physical activity. And then post physical activity, so within like, they say the ultimate window is like 30 minutes, which I think is bullshit. You can eat however long you want to, just like if you're hungry, eat. That's all there is to it. So again, you want to prioritize carbs and protein and then put fats on top of that. So in roller derby, I know specifically we have these things called after parties, and we go to the after parties and we eat plates of nachos and we drink beer, or some of us do. And that is fine, except are you really getting protein? Which is what you want to prioritize protein a little bit more after physical activity to help those muscles recover. And then your carbs are replenishing any energy that your body had to use that was stored already. And then fats. The fats will obviously do the job that they're meant to do and help you feel fuller. So nachos are okay. A burger might be a better choice. Like a steak and potatoes would be an even better choice. Or if you're vegetarian, maybe like seitan would be a good choice because it's got protein and carbohydrates in it. Yeah. Oh, that fourth macro. You're getting that fourth macro at the after party. That's why I didn't talk about it at all. So that's what I'm talking about. Post physical activity, everybody says there's a 30-minute window. I'm usually not hungry until 45 minutes or an hour after I eat. And I'm not interested in forcing myself to eat if I'm not hungry, especially if I've just done a fuck ton of intense activity. So it's a lot about just paying attention to what your body wants at the time. For me, right after a game or right after practice is a lot of just hydrating, drinking a lot. Because you can't always leave the bench and go get your water or get another Gatorade or whatever. So it's hydrating. And then usually once I've like hydrated myself back up, I get hungry and then I find something to eat. This is a really good time to like sit and think about what you could have packed in your bag or on your person that would help you meet these things. So like I always have a protein bar stuffed in my bag in case I get really hungry, like on the drive home, because if I don't have a protein bar to eat, I'm going to fucking stop at Taco Bell and I'm going to get what I always get, which is a bean burrito and a 7-layer burrito and a cherry limeade, which is not ideal. So I don't want to do that. Like I'd much rather eat a protein bar, or like, I don't know, fancy sandwich I had in there. So that's nutrient timing. Again, you don't want to worry about nutrient timing until your calories, macros, and micros are on point. But if you find yourself like really bonking near the end of a practice, this might be a way to fix it. Okay. And I know like a lot of roller derby athletes that I talk to come to me and like, well, what do I do about tournaments? Right. Because the tournament is like, you play a game and then you have this weird limbo period of like an hour maybe, or 2 hours or 5 hours, or who knows. And then you play another game. You just want to kind of cut those chunks up into separate physical activity, right? So you look at one game as a separate physical activity. You're going to do this whole cycle for one game, right? And then you're going to do it again for the second game as best you can. You might find that like if your games are close together at tournaments, that your post-activity carbs and protein become the pre-activity carbs and protein for the next bout, and so you don't get to do as many fats, and that's okay. That's kind of how you want to manage that there. But again, like if we're talking about a tournament day, your calorie number is going to be all whacked out anyway, right? If you are competing in 2 to 3 games in one day, you're going to need way more calories than you would need on a typical day. And that's okay. So like on a tournament day, you have my full blessing to throw your calories out the window and just follow this nutrient timing protocol so that you don't ever bonk, because that's what we're aiming for. The biggest thing in terms of like carbs when we're talking about pre-physical activity is things that are easily digestible for your body. So Gavin gave some examples in the chat box. But you're going to have to play around with it, because some people find rice really easily digestible and they can eat it before they go to practice. And for some people that doesn't feel good. And it's always an experiment with your own body. The only piece of advice I would give you there is like, don't ever experiment before a game. Like when you go into a game, you need to know that whatever you're doing during that game is going to work, that you're not going to down some Greek yogurt before you go to the game and then puke everywhere because you're lactose intolerant and you just didn't realize that was going to happen. So if you're going to try something new, try it before you go to the gym, preferably, right? Because if you're at the gym, you can always like just leave if you feel terrible, or you try it before practice, because that's going to mimic a game as closely as we can get. So that's nutrient timing. That one a little bit longer than I was expecting, but that one is really valuable for athletes once they've figured out all of the other stuff. It can really make a big difference. And the last part of the pyramid, the very tippy top, is supplements. So I've already alluded to this, like supplements are called supplements for a reason, right? Because they supplement your diet. They do not take place of your diet. So there are some supplements they do recommend to athletes, even if they're still trying to figure out how to build their like nutritional foundation. Even if you're still figuring out your calories, even if you're still figuring out your macros, even if you're still figuring out your micros, there are some supplements that are going to be really valuable for you, even if you're still doing those things. Protein is the number one supplement. If you're trying to hit a much higher protein number than you've ever hit before, then you can use protein supplements, and that is okay. Like that is 100% okay, and you absolutely should. The only caveat there is that you should never supplement more than 40% of your protein. So if in case of like somebody that's just starting and I say, I want you to have 100 grams of protein, then you can get up to 40 grams of protein from like a protein bar or a protein powder, or protein shake. And then the other 60 grams of protein we want to have come from food. I will come back to the vegan and vegetarian questions. I might make you guys ask them again so I can focus on them. So protein is a totally okay supplement to start using right now. Just remember that only 40% of your protein should come from a supplement. You want to make sure that the rest is coming from food, that it's coming from, seitan, that it's coming from eggs, that it's coming from shrimp, that it's coming from whatever. Vitamin D is a really important one, especially for women, because it helps us with our hormone regulation. So if you're not taking vitamin D and you don't get outside a lot, you absolutely should take vitamin D and probably get outside. I live in the Pacific Northwest. As I'm sure you can see, it's dark out right now. It's mostly overcast for 9 months out of the year. If I don't take vitamin D, I'm kind of fucked. So definitely take that. If you're not taking that right now, that is one that you can safely add in. If you're vegan or vegetarian, another one that you should definitely add in that I didn't put on here is vitamin B. If you've literally ever been to a doctor and told them you're a vegan or vegetarian, they've told you this. So it probably is not a new thing for you to hear. Other things that I recommend for athletes, especially power athletes like roller derby skaters, is creatine, which can help you replenish kind of the basic building blocks of energy that we use within our muscles more quickly. And joint support, which is really, really important, again, as a roller derby athlete. So that's things like glucosamine, fish oil, chondroitin, curcumin, collagen. Those are all things that I talk about a lot. And those are all supplements that I take. My supplement stack is ridiculous. And then melatonin, which is for more restful sleep. Those are all ones that I would say you could start implementing right now that can make a big difference, not necessarily for your performance right away, but just for your lifestyle. It can make your joints feel better. It can help you sleep more fully. It can help manage your hormones and balance your hormones. It can help you reach your protein goals. Like all of those things are okay to use supplements for. And then I already mentioned this as well too. Once you've built your foundation, if you start feeling that things are happening to you that feel strange, like I started to notice a couple of months ago that like just things were completely out of whack. My hormones were out of whack. I was like crying all the time for no reason. And I went and talked to a nutritionist and they were like, let's try some of these supplements that it seems like maybe you're not getting in your diet because of whatever reason. And so then I started taking magnesium and I started taking potassium, and those things helped a lot. So that's what supplements are for, right? Like I wasn't getting enough potassium because I was getting the like minimum number of potassium from, although a lot of us don't get enough potassium, but I wasn't getting enough potassium from my food. So I started supplementing it at the recommendation of a doctor, and I wasn't getting enough magnesium. And so I started supplementing that at the recommendation of a doctor. So that's why supplements are at the top, right? If you are not eating a good, solid, balanced diet, then the supplements aren't really going to help you as much as fixing your diet would help you, as much as changing your lifestyle would help you. Your body is designed to utilize actual pieces of food better than it can utilize pills. So that's why, supplements are supplements for a reason. So that's the tippy top. We made it. We made it to the top of the pyramid. We did it. Some sort of summary. I think I was going to change the title of this to something clever, and then I didn't. So this is some sort of summary. So the very first step of getting to where you are on the nutritional pyramid is usually awareness. And for some of you, that might mean that you're all the way back down at calories and you're like, well, shit, I don't even know how many calories I'm eating. So then it becomes like, become aware of how many calories you're eating, become aware of how much protein you're eating, and then you know where to make changes. You know where to focus so that you can get there more easily, right? If you track your calories and you're like, hey, I am magically eating the number of calories that I'm supposed to eat, but I'm only eating 2 grams of protein a day, like, well, then I think it's pretty clear where you should focus your nutritional goals on. And then food is fuel, but it's also enjoyment, right? Like whenever you're eating something, you should always ask, do I enjoy this? Does it make me feel good? Am I just eating this because I feel like I have to? Like, I don't want to feel chained to my food. That sucks. So don't get chained to your food. Like if I recommend in this, like maybe Gavin recommended something in this chat box and you were like, God, that food sounds gross. Like I don't want to eat Greek yogurt. I don't care how much protein Greek yogurt has in it, but you're like sitting there just forcing yourself to eat Greek yogurt. Don't. If you don't enjoy it, there are lots and lots of options out there for you. Like we live in a society where they are growing meat that is not made out of animals in labs that has a very similar nutritional profile. So like the sky's the limit for you. Don't try and eat something or force something on yourself that you're not going to enjoy, because that will make it harder to stick to. And then does it make me feel good, right? If you're eating foods that make you feel like shit, even if they're nutritionally valuable, that's not a food for you. So don't eat it in. Be done with it. And then you guys have kind of been asking questions as you go. You can come back and collect any leftover questions that have been out there hanging, or any of the vegetarian and vegan questions that you guys want to ask again. So last things last, all of this stuff, all of this content and the information in this webinar came from the coaching page of Pain Free Performance RD, which is roller derby, specifically for roller derby athletes. And it's a group coaching program that Gavin and I run together. Oh, hey, there's another picture of Gavin, so you can pretend like you can see his face. For roller derby athletes to help you look, feel, and perform better both on track and off. We spent an entire, was it a month, Gavin? I think it was a month. We spent an entire month just focusing on all of these pieces of macro tracking and nutrition and how to improve your protein numbers and kind of a lot of the questions that you guys are asking in this chat box. So most of this information came from that. And because a lot of the information came from that, and Gavin and I are both here, we are opening this group up right now to anybody that's on the webinar if you want to join. So it is a Facebook community. You get both of us answering your questions, very similar to what's going on in the chat box. It does have training programs that you get access to each month. So we just started a new one yesterday. And everyone in the group loves the hell out of it. It's got lots of plyometrics in it. It's all about athleticism, which is very cool. And we do monthly themes that are focused around training, nutrition, mindset, lifestyle. So any of these nutritional questions that you guys have, if you come into the group, like it's a free-for-all. You can ask us these questions as you go. And then we do live coaching calls every week that are kind of similar to this webinar. You get to ask questions along with the coaching call if you need to. Gavin and I usually switch off, and then there's lots of accountability and camaraderie. So if this sounds like something that you're interested in, or you've been looking for a training program, or you want to have access to coaches so you can ask these questions or any questions, we can help you there. So because you're on the webinar, if you are interested in joining, you can join within the next 12 hours for $39 a month, which is 20% off the regular price. And that's the URL below, but I think I can maybe do this. I actually don't know if this will work. Let's try. So I think I can send an offer to you guys and you can click on it if you're interested in joining the group. So I don't know if you can see that. Maybe you can. But anyway, the URL is down here if you want to check out the sales page. If you have any questions, you can about this or about the webinar, you can ask them in the chat box, or you can email me at prime@ironoctopusfitness.com or Gavin. And I think his email is, I know it. He can share it in the chat box if he's interested. So that's the webinar. I'm at the end. This is the last slide. So we'll go back and collect any questions. And if you guys have to leave, you have to leave, and that's cool. And we'd love to see you in the group if you feel like joining. Otherwise, thank you for coming to the very first webinar of Iron Octopus Fitness and McHale Strength for 2018. There will be lots more about lots of different topics. So if you have requests, let me know. Okay, so I am going to ask that if you guys have, you're welcome. Thank you guys for coming. If you guys have vegan and vegetarian questions, if you could retype those in so I can see them, that'd be great, because I'm sure I missed a lot of them as they were going by. For the record, I was vegetarian for about 12 years and then vegan for 6, and I am not any longer. You can ask me questions about that if you'd like to, but you don't have to. And then we'll just sit here and I'm going to drink my water because I'm thirsty now. I am going to work at making the webinar recording available and archived later. If you're here on the webinar, if I can make that happen, I'll send it to you. And if not, I will at the very least send you the slides so that you can look over them. I got so into the webinar that my tea got cold. That's a real bummer. Yes, so protein supplements do have caloric value. Typically it's the same as what we talked about on the macronutrient page. So if they're primarily protein, you're looking at about 4 calories per gram of protein that's in there. It's not a lot depending on which supplement you buy. Like I get these little bottles of muscle milk and they're like 30 grams of protein and there's very little of anything else in there. So I think their calorie value is like 130 calories or something like that. Vegetarian or non-dairy protein supplement options. So Vega is the one that I used, VEGA, and I am pretty sure I mean, they are non-dairy. It's a vegan supplement company. So they're non-dairy. Anything that you get from Vega is going to be vegetarian and non-dairy. It's going to be completely vegan. Most of their stuff tastes pretty good. Builder's bars from Cliff Bars are like a really good protein supplement. They might have dairy in them. Actually, no, I ate them when I was vegan, so they don't have dairy in them. And they have 20 grams of protein. In vegetarians, so if you eat like eggs are good for vegetarians, cheeses, there are a fair number of like beans that are higher quality than others that have more protein than carbohydrates. Tofu, obviously. Seitan is a really big one. That's what I used when I was vegan, which is basically, it gets made out of wheat. So if you're gluten-free, you wouldn't be able to use it, but it's a wheat meat and you collect the gluten and it turns it into this like meat-like substance. And it's really easy to make and you can make huge batches at one time. So I used a lot of that. Also, there's a lot of really good stuff in like the vegetarian aisle of the store. And all you have to do if you're buying something that is vegetarian or vegan is just look at the label. You want to look for things that are primarily protein rather than carbohydrates. That's the biggest challenge for vegetarian and vegan sources of protein, is that you often find carbohydrates and proteins in an equal amount. So that's kind of what you're looking for. But vegan and vegetarian, like yogurts and things like that, are getting better and better, which is pretty cool. Did I answer that? Did I answer your question? I hope that was helpful. I'm trying to think of all the stuff I ate, but I wasn't tracking when I was vegan, and I know that I wasn't getting enough protein. It is a challenge if you're vegan or vegetarian. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. The websites that I would recommend, again, is No Meat Athlete. So that's a really good place to go and see other athletes that are really succeeding in their sport that are getting enough protein. Other places to get recipes if you're vegan or vegetarian is postpunkkitchen.com. I guess I can type these in. So postpunkkitchen.com is my favorite place to go for vegetarian recipes. Did that come in? Yes. Oh. I do not think Vega is soy free. I'm trying to find questions that haven't been answered. Do I make myself different meals than my family, or do I feed my family the same stuff in different portions? We eat the same stuff in different portions, except for my fucking toddler because he eats nothing. But my husband is also like into tracking his macros, so we make macro friendly meals. Typically, it's just meat and veggies because we are boring and it's easy. I get a lot of my protein from protein bars. Nut-free protein bars. I don't know of any of those off the top of my head. RX bar might be a good one. I actually don't know if that one's nut-free, but I know it doesn't have as many calories, or as many ingredients. That's what I mean. So that might be one to look up. Oh, big girls hitting their calories. So, fuck. Oh, thank you, Frida. That is how seitan is spelled. So if you're a bigger skater and you know that you have a lot of calories to hit just because calories are based on weight, and that's for weight maintenance, one of the things that I would really recommend is that you take the number of calories that you have and cut off maybe 200 or 300 and start there. So you're going to calculate your calories and start a little bit lower than that and hit for between 120 and 180 grams of protein. So, right, if you're a bigger skater, it's going to tell you that you need 220 or 230 grams of protein, and you don't. You can hit between 120 and 180, you're good to go. What you're primarily looking for is how do you feel as you're eating those calories. So if you're eating 300 below your caloric number and you feel okay, like you don't feel like you're bonking, you don't feel like you're constantly starving, your energy isn't dipping, all of that stuff, then you can stick there, right? Or you can edge off another couple of hundred of calories and see how you feel. So that's really for you if you're a bigger skater and you're getting like just in a really large calorie number, like 3,500 or something like that. And you're like, well, there's no way I can eat 3,500 calories. Then start 300 calories below and try that. And if that's really hard to hit and you still feel okay with the number of calories that you're eating, then continue to drop calories. You don't want to go all the way down to like 1,600 or 2,000 or 2,300 even right away. But you can start kind of shaving off those calories once you realize that you're feeling okay, right? That your body is functioning as best as at its peak performance, even on that low number of calories. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm missing so many questions. I'm trying not to be an asshole, you guys, but so like you're asking so many good questions and I am completely already distracted by all of them. Okay. I forgot that I had to keep scrolling. Okay, I've been here. These questions they've answered. Good. All right. So Alexis, if you want to email me at prime@ironoctopusfitness.com, we can answer all these questions for you. And we can kind of take it off the webinar. But other than that, if you guys don't have any more questions, thank you for joining me. And again, if you have any requests for other webinars you'd like to see, definitely send them my way because I'd love to hear that. I'm just sitting here drinking my tea, my cold tea, my effing bird's mug. Thank you guys for coming. I had such a good time, despite the fact that my family was distracting me. Oh, Ray. So tips for a smaller person wanting to bulk up. I would do the same thing, but the opposite of what I told the larger skaters. So start at your typical caloric number and then slowly add a couple of hundred calories every couple of weeks and see how you feel. The really important thing with bulking up is that you do it slowly, right? So you don't want to just pack on 1,000 calories right on top, and that you are training for that as well, right? So your physical training has to kind of be working towards bulking you up along with your nutrition. But even if you are just training for muscular endurance, if you're training for sports performance, if you can manipulate your calories in that way, just adding a couple of hundred calories every couple of weeks and seeing how you feel, then that's probably going to be a good way for you to do that. And yes, stuffing 1,000,000 calories in your gob does feel impossible. I have never had to do it. I'm sure I'll bulk eventually, but I watched my husband who had to eat like 400 grams of carbohydrates a day, which is a lot of carbohydrates. And he just ate like a hobbit. It was like he ate breakfast, he ate second breakfast, he ate 11sies, like he had lunch, he had noon meal, he had all of these things. Like you have to eat a lot of the time and a lot of food. If you're bulking, like if you're a smaller skater and you're trying to bulk up, you want to go for quality first. Yeah. But you will find, like, if you're really bulking up, if you're eating way more calories than you should, that there are going to be some of your calories are going to have to be slightly lower quality. Like you are going to be eating some fruit snacks sometimes, or you might be drinking juice or whatever just to get those calories in, because it is hard to stomach, 1,000 calories of kale versus 1,000 calories of donuts. 1,000 calories of donuts. Sounds good. I'll go eat a donut now. All right, I'm just going to quietly and creepily hang out here in this lower right-hand corner until everybody is gone. So if you guys have any more questions, I can answer them. Yeah, like 2 donuts. I guess that would be like 2 donuts. Maybe it might be 4 donuts. Oh, 4 donuts. I don't even know if I could eat 4 donuts in a row, to be honest. I feel like my stomach would rebel. And then to go to practice tonight, oh man, that would be a huge mistake. That would be like that question where you're like, does this make me feel good? Like eating the donuts was fun, but then going to practice was not fun. Awesome, Nora. I can't wait to chat with you. Love it when people ask questions. I'm just lurking down here in the corner, waiting for more questions. You're welcome. I'll see you around. Well, maybe not see you. What do these do? Mark as a question. Oh my God. Well, now I can just mess around with all the other features of the webinar. Yes, you can absolutely mix honey with the yogurt. Honey is a quick carbohydrate, so it does have a fair amount of calories just because of it's primarily a sugar. If you're looking to like use plain yogurt and make plain yogurt be less bitter, I use Mio. Yeah, sorry, Raina. I'm just realizing there's like a button to mark things as questions too. Um, I use Mio, which is like the liquid stuff that you're supposed to squirt in your water so it doesn't taste like water. I use that to flavor my plain yogurt. Yeah, fruit works really well, applesauce, things like that. But honey is totally fine. If you really like that, like, yeah, go for it. I'm not a big fan of honey just because, I don't know. I feel like my sister might have traumatized me with honey when I was little. But yeah, dump it all in there, man. I like to make yogurt parfaits where it's just like fruit and chocolate chips and whipped cream and cocoa powder. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. All right, everyone. I am going to log off. Thank you for coming, and I will see you guys later.